What's up, Duke fans? Welcome to the Devil's Den podcast. I'm your host, Josh Smith, joined by my co-host, Raul. We're happy to welcome back in Brian Geisinger with us, 247 Sports, Buzzbeat podcast. If you're listeners of us, you're very familiar with Brian's work by now. Figured it was time to get him in, and let's talk about a few things. We didn't really plan for Big Pat to go down, but that'll probably be some of the things that we're going to talk about. We've had a recent kind of slim explosion, but prior to that, we had some questions, so we'll probably get into some of that stuff too. Obviously, off the top here, though, fellas, Duke beat Pitt last night, 70-54. Cayden Boozer had a kind of a mediocre Cayden Boozer game, if you will. Still had 17, 10, and 4. I think he had 6 turnovers in this one, though. They kind of junked him up a little bit. You did get a big game from Slim with 21, had a nice Caleb Foster game. We'll talk about a little bit of that just as we weave in some of the overall stuff. Spoiler alert, Pitt's not very good, so we're not going to spend too much time on that one. But Brian, as we come in here, man, let's just start with the Big Pat stuff, and hopefully he's going to play Saturday. But if not, one, what is Pat's value to Duke's offensive sets and what they do? And then two, what do you maybe kind of lean into or lean away from kind of without Pat? Because I think we've started to see a little bit of like that big initiated waiting on a wing to just dive. Teams are starting to kind of like Carolina was just like, dude, we're not giving you that. Like, no. Pitt was even like, no, like we're not going to let Malik just sit here and throw dimes. Where do you go from that, I guess, with or without Pat?
It gets a lot harder, that's for sure. I mean, Pat has been really good this season. He's maybe been like a little lower than I was sort of like hoping overall, but he's been a really, really impressive two-way player. I mean, I think he's been Duke's second, third best player. Like, you know, obviously there's a bit of a gap with Cam just sort of like leading the way there, but Pat has been like a two-way force for them this season. There are not many guys in college hoops that can like face up, initiate, and sort of like pick teams apart with his passing. He's so instrumental to that. And in part, like that's a huge piece of Duke's offense, in part because of how they're set up. Like we've talked about this a few times when I've been on. I'm sure y'all have talked about it other times this season, but like even with Caleb playing pretty well this year and Cayden giving them some moments, like this is not like a spread pick and roll offense. You know, I mean, they're really, really reliant on their flow, their flash game, their 5-out. And the 5-out is a lot of, you know, Pat, Malik, and Cam facing up, and Duke running split action where they'll have, you know, Foster and Evan sort of like run at each other and cut in other directions. You were sort of talking about this, and you know, they leaned on it a lot at UNC, I think in part to sort of like get Vasar out of the paint and then try to, and so that way he wouldn't be sitting in drop coverage against their pick and roll. And they could try to open up the floor and then still put pressure on the rim with the slips. But Pat, obviously, like when they do get the spread pick and roll, he's a good screen and roll guy, especially on those like empty corners. When they use off-ball action where he sets that down screen for Evans and then he curls to the empty corner or he dives to the empty corner and Slim sort of like curls to the middle of the court. It's the play that, you know, Kon Knueppel and Kaman were so good with last season. That's been a nice piece of Duke's offense at times this year. And then there's like the defense and rebounding component. I mean, you know, this is a guy 13% offensive rebound rate, 19% defensive rebound rate, 7% block rate. He draws a ton of fouls. There just aren't like that many centers in college basketball who can play make like he does, while also like doing a pretty good job taking care of the ball, that can like pound the glass, and that can also give you some rim protection. And there's some redundancy and maybe some overlap with he and Cam. I think for the most part, Duke's done a pretty good job sort of like syncing those guys up. And I think they've done utilizing the post and like high-low action and, you know, the sort of like post-to-post passing with Boozer when he gets a double team and he can look for Pat or Malik, you know, in the dunker spot or cutting from that, like the weak side slot into the lane around the double. So Pat just does a nice job complementing their best player. But also you can sort of like run the offense through him for portions of the game too. So it's it's a tough miss. I mean, this guy statistically, he's had a phenomenal season. And again, I've been pretty impressed with him this year. And like, where do you go without him? Like, I mean, it's tough. Clemson's obviously a team that's got a lot of size that can really play through the post with Godfrey and with Welling. So they've got in there one of the best sort of like, high-low offense attacks in the country up there with UConn and Purdue. They're really good at that on an annual basis. I think you've really got to try to like lean into speed with Malik and really work on pressuring the ball, trapping ball screens, which they went away from that in the UNC game. They played a lot of drop coverage in that game, which I thought was a good adjustment and gave them a chance to win on the road. And honestly, like some of their like possessions, some of the like bad defensive possessions late in the game were when they switched, Cam twice. Including the game-winning three. It's like, Caleb beats him off the dribble. Or I guess, no, it must have been Dixon beats him off the dribble.
Yeah.
Foster has to come over off Trimble on the weak side to help at the rim. You spray out, wide open shooter.
Plants a dime right there, yeah.
So, and that's how it goes. Basketball defense, you can't take away everything. But Pat is their like best drop center because of his size, his rebounding, his rim protection obviously. I think Malik can replicate some of like the face-up passing and scoring stuff, or not maybe some of the face-up passing and playmaking that Duke wants to get to. He can kind of slot in there. He's maybe a little bit more risky with his passing and not quite as like pristine, but he can still get it done too. He can still give you some of like the cut finishing when teams put two on the ball against Cam, but he's not the sort of like forceful, low post, play finisher around the basket that that Pat is. And you can just look at I know Malik's shooting a great number at the hoop this season, but at a much lower usage. He doesn't draw fouls at the same rate that Pat does. So it's a sizable loss. And obviously like this is a time of the year where it's certainly like tough with Clemson, Michigan 10 days from now, week and a half from now, Virginia, State, UNC. These are like all top 25 teams, and some of them have like real like power in the front court, especially Michigan. So so it's a lot to deal with, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'd be worried about. Just Malik, as amazing a defender as he is, just doesn't have the girth that Ngongba does. He can't kind of form that wall at the rim. We saw that against UNC, right, where Vesser just went to work on him essentially, and he really had nothing. As great a defender as he is, he had nothing for him just because he was mismatched size-wise. I wanted to bring up something from your article that you published on February 4th on Substack here, triangulating the offense, because I thought there were some interesting numbers in here that show why we are kind of maybe right to be concerned about a prolonged absence for Ngongba should it happen. So here you see Boozer and Ngongba, no Brown, plus 243 in 387 minutes. Boozer and Brown, no Ngongba, plus 137 in 297 minutes. So the minutes aren't that different, but you have almost 100-point difference there. Now this was outdated by a week, so I don't know how it's changed since then, but I assume maybe the reason the defense looks so much better with Boozer and Ngongba there is just the defensive rebounding and then the rim protection. Is that your sense there?
Yeah, the foul drawing too is probably noticeable. Pat's a guy that draws a ton of contact, and he and Cam are sort of like the two guys who really do that for Duke. Even Caleb is not sort of like drawing shooting fouls at the same rate that he was a season ago. Obviously, he's got a much bigger role now, so that's on sort of like a per possession basis. The last 5 games, 90 minutes with Malik and Cam on the court, Duke's plus 21 in those minutes, which is like, okay. And offensively still scoring a great number, 122 points per 100, great number. Defensively, they're giving up 107 points per 100, which is like decent, but that's sort of like probably like just below, sort of like the level Duke wants it to be at. Those lineups again, last 5 games, so sort of an arbitrary sample. But in those 90 minutes with Cam and Malik on the court, the sort of like one number offensively that is down is Duke's free throw attempt rate. So sort of like the percentage of free throw attempts to field goals. This is what I was talking about, Pat's ability to draw fouls. That number is hovering at 21.6%, which is that's way down. That's way down. In the sort of like the lineup that I think will be like their starting group going forward, for at least for the time being, which is Foster, Evans, Dame Sarr, Malik Brown, Cam Boozer. In the last 5 games, that lineup is -7 in 24 minutes, which is like a little surprise. It's like that surprises me a little bit. For the season, that's been a pretty good lineup, you know. So it's like if you peel out and like obviously the larger your sample, the sort of like more representative it's going to be in terms of like predicting how that lineup ultimately, like I think that lineup can still be really good. You know, maybe you need to tell Caleb to like drive it a little bit more, Isaiah to drive it a little bit more. Isaiah is such a great free throw shooter. It's like, you know, you want him at the line. It's just like, that's not really quite his game. You know, he's obviously more of this sort of like off ball mover, roving shooter type thing. And then obviously like the one of the big issues with Pat that I sort of meant to bring up a second ago is like, if you don't have him, like Duke has this amazing front court this season. To me, that was sort of like the real like strengths of this team was that they had, you know, Cam, Pat, Malik, like 2 lottery picks potentially, and a guy like Malik that's just either at worst like, you know, an awesome college player who's also doubles as like one of the best defenders in the country, pound for pound. But it's like it's like you take those 80 minutes per game at the 4 and the 5, and you divide it between these 3 guys. And it's like if you pull one out, there's not really someone to like promote up and have like sort of like soak up the minute, you know, like that's just not, they don't, you know, I mean, I don't think they're going to like burn the red shirt on Wilkins. And even then he's sort of more like wingy than he is sort of like front court guy. I mean, I think if you felt better about where Hymenia is at this point in the season, and maybe we can talk about Nick a little bit more, but you maybe just say like, okay, well, like this is a way to get him on the court more. Like that's a good, when Malik went down last season, it was a way to get Pat on the floor more. And like Duke doesn't have that this year. You know, they don't have that was sort of a luxury that they had a season ago that is not afforded to them this year. So maybe one of the things I could also see them doing is like they did against UNC for big portions of that game, including at the start of it. And this is something that I wrote about them doing in my preview piece, is that they cross-matched. And you saw them put Cam on Vezar, and they put Malik, when he was in the game, on Caleb Wilson. And so maybe that's something you see them do a little bit more. And then that way you can still have Malik to switch 1 through 4. You can keep Cam in the drop or put him up at the level. Offensively, that should like they could really open the floor for Cam. You know, he can try to like attack those guys if he gets cross matches on the other side. But obviously there's some wear and tear that comes with it. And there's some like foul concerns, and like, you know, again, Michigan is coming up in a week and a half, and they are loaded at the front court. Morez Johnson, Adi Mara, these are future NBA centers, you know. That's even before you get to Jaxa Lendenborg, who's been, you know, one of the best forwards in the country, you know, is basically like on par or sort of like in the tier below, you know, where Cam and Wilson have been this season. So it's going to be tough. They're going to have to get creative. Guys are going to have to get thrust into positions that they probably haven't quite proven that they can do, sort of like whether that's Hymenia and Sarr playing more minutes. But like, I got to think that coming into this season, this is something that John and the staff considered. That Pat, who's a guy who like, you know, has dealt with injuries on and off. This one's different because it's on the hand. But you saw even when they were out on the West Coast at Stanford, like had the little like foot flare up or what seemed to be like a foot or ankle sort of like flare up. And I was at, I think it was the Boston College game where he sort of like tweaked it and came out, didn't play much in the second half of that. So, you know, playing against Clemson is different than playing against Cal or Stanford or whatever. But I got to think hopefully they've got the few tricks up their sleeve And my guess would be they lean on their speed game. They lean on and they just probably chuck even more threes too. Like that might sort of be, and that's higher. It's a higher variance approach, but you just try to like dial up even more of that. Maybe you use Harris as a way to just sort of like get more 3-point volume. Darren coming off the bench. So we'll see, but they're going to have to get creative because there's no like, even if Malik is sort of like plug and play to like replace, he's a very different player type, especially on defense. And beyond that, it's sort of like uncharted territory.
Yeah, I was a little encouraged that they did defensively so well against Pitt. I mean, I know it's hard to gauge with that level of opponent, but when you have Malik essentially foul out in 22 minutes or whatever it was, 24 minutes, then you're just leaning on a lot of Cam at the 5. You're kind of wearing him down. He's not maybe the best rim protector in the world to begin with. And so being able to hold them to the point total that they did was encouraging, but I would be worried about that versus some better offensive teams, frankly, if you're having to go with a smaller lineup with Cam at the 5 and like Haminia or Sarr at the 4 for extended stretches.
Yeah. And again, maybe the argument is, well, we'll make him pay for it on the other end. We'll put more shooting around Cam but it's tough because it's like,
well, what shooting is that, right?
That's sort of like what I was about to get to is that like they almost don't have the wing depth and like production to really be like, okay, like, screw it for, when Malik sits or whatever, for a couple of games, like we're just going to like go small, you know what I mean? We'll spread you out, we'll switch defensively and we'll launch. Again, like maybe Harris is like the button to push for that. Like maybe he's a way to sort of like generate, again, sort of just like more volume, but then, you're probably losing some size. And then again, Pat is such an important like initiator for them offensively. Like I feel like we talk about it every time I come on, like the way Duke orients its 5-out offense, especially this season with Pat, like that's been the one difference is that like, they didn't really like organize stuff through Kaman last season. And they would do it obviously when Pat or Malik would play last year, but the difference is they're dialing it up even more with Pat and Malik sort of like platooning at that center spot. So it changes their lineups. It makes them less scheme versatile defensively. It makes them less impactful on the defensive glass at the rim, in terms of rim protection. So it just, Ngongba touches every facet of the game. Because he's such a versatile front court player. And again, there's just no like, other than just like playing Malik and hoping he and Cam can play like 35 minutes in these games and stay out of foul trouble. There's no, like, I think there's no sort of like obvious solution. You're going to have to sort of like get a little more creative with the pieces on hand and just hope that he can come back. Like, it's like, but it's just tough timing because they're trying to cling to, the top spot in the ACC and being on the 1 seed line for the NCAA tournament. And, Clemson's coming to town. It's like, that's tough. I guess the one, and forgive me because I'm droning here, but like they got a lot of home games on the horizon. They don't really play a tough away game. I mean, I know Michigan's neutral. They're on the road at Notre Dame, on the road at State. Hopefully Pat would be back by then, if not much sooner. So you got to hope maybe, lean into, the home crowd and really just like asking Cam if he can do even more offensively for you.
Yeah. I mean, having Clemson and Virginia at home is huge for Duke. They got a little lucky there. I was to start the season, I was a little worried. Oh, we've got Louisville twice and UNC twice, but it turned out that Louisville seems to be an easy matchup for Duke for whatever reason. So
I think they're getting that Louisville team is getting. I mean, I just watched them on.
They're getting better.
Just absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was Michael Brown on another planet.
Yeah.
One of the sneaky additions for them. He did not play in the. I don't think he played. He definitely didn't play in the second game against Duke. He played in the first one. But Connie Ruths is back, the sophomore forward from Louisville, and like he's skinny, but he's really athletic, and he gives them like a little bit more like punch and length defensively. And I think that's something they missed in the second game of that matchup at Duke this season. I think him being back. I mean, they're undefeated since he's come back, and he's played very well for them in games. And so I think he's given them a little bit like somewhat of an edge in like, he's not just like a hustle motor guy. Like he's an impactful defender. He gets blocks and steals. And again, he's like really useful for them too.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like just watching Duke play Louisville, it looked like Duke versus a mid-major, to be honest, in that Cameron game, where just the size disparity was just so great that Louisville really couldn't do anything with those over-the-top passes. Whereas you saw the difference with Duke playing UNC. UNC had the size to deny that stuff, and I think that's what you really need to be able to beat Duke. The teams that have, challenged them the most, like Florida at home, for example. Played Duke really well, has great size. I would think Michigan would be able to do the same thing, deny those over-the-top passes, protect the paint a little bit against Cam Boozer's drives, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, in the second matchup, Duke-Louisville, like they had Pat Kelsey like guessing every time down the court. You could see them like they didn't know. They started double teaming Cam. They're doing it from one pass away with the guard coming down to double, and he's making great passes off that. He was finding Dame on cuts. When they were switching those actions, and Cam or Pat would go into the post, they would try to front Cam in the post, and then Malik or Pat would flash to the top of the key, and then they'd look high-low. And then they've got Duke has some actions to sort of like fake like they're going to run the cross screen to bring Cam to one side of the floor, and then he sort of like hits the brakes, spins, and seals on the strong side. And just like it was great play calling, it was great sequencing. Cam was obviously dynamic, and it just you see this. I saw this happen a lot with like Cooper last season, Cam this year with Duke. Just like teams trying to figure out if they want to put two on the ball or not. And just like, okay, are we going to put two on the ball? Well, where's it going to come from? Where the rotation's going to be? Like I can think of recently 2 games I've seen in Cameron, like Wake Forest and Louisville, where both those teams trying to be like, well, what should we do? Like, what are we doing? And both teams during those games were just like, all right, we got to change it up and do the other thing instead.
And neither worked.
I kind of appreciate it. I even asked Earl Grant from Boston College about this after the Duke BC game. He was basically like, we just decided like we're going to single cover him, and we're just not going to let the other guys get going. Like we're not going to get in rotation on the Boozer post ups. So, different teams are going to approach that differently, but they're really going to have, like, again, to go back to minutes without Pat, like they're really going to have to like squeeze even more out of like the Cam post game or the Cam pick and roll or any of the Cam initiated offense becomes like, it was already critical, and it's sort of like more crucial now than before.
Yeah. Well, I think another guy that we really haven't talked about too much, ironically, in this conversation is probably Isaiah Evans, right? As a guy who could like benefit maybe from a little bit added volume. We saw challenge accepted maybe a little bit at Pittsburgh coming out in the second half. As soon as the kid checked in, just like went on a little mini heater there for himself. Brian, for us, man, like we've like here recently, obviously he gets a little bit of flowers for that one, like having a good game. But I think that he's kind of flew under the radar in terms of like not getting much heat maybe for some of this stuff because Duke's been really well. And at the same time, I think there is a little bit there of like, hey, this is supposed to be 1B to the 1A. And the gap between those, and maybe that's just more for Cam, how good Cam is, and not really indicative of Slim. But this is a guy who before last night was like 33% from 3, coming off of 42% last year. For you, man, like where is that? Because there's been so many improvements in like all the other like he's arguably our 3rd best defender. Like I mean, you can probably say definitely 2nd or 3rd best on ball. He's getting some more rebounds. He's junking it up. He's blocking some shots. He's getting to the line more. But the 3 just isn't there.
And I pointed out to you, Josh, that his on-off in this like 10 or 11 game stretch of ACC play has been really, really good. So Duke is playing
Yeah,
way
it's
better with
noticeable.
Evans on the floor.
Yeah.
But there's still, it still seems like there's more there, right? You want more efficiency, you want more volume and scoring, you want just more aggression. I don't know, but
at least there was some lift in it last night, because before that, that shot was flat until last night he started to get a little more arc. But go ahead, Brian, where are you at?
Yeah, I think his season's been interesting. I think there's been, for lack of a better word, because you sort of noted it, like he has shown growth in some like important areas. Like he's getting to the line like way more this season, right? And he's not Cooper or Cam when it comes to drawing contact, but drew 2.6 fouls per 40 minutes last season. That's up to 3.8 fouls drawn per 40 this year. Free throw attempt rate, obviously, like with his usage going up too, that's up to 30% free throw attempt rate from 17.5% last year. And he's been, just below, 90% from the line. So obviously the more he gets there, the better. He's been above 90% in ACC play from the stripe. I keep waiting. I think maybe even the last time I came on with you guys earlier in the season, one of the things I sort of like thought, man, I don't know if I like predicted it, but was sort of thinking like at some point there's going to be like a 5-game stretch or a 6-game, whatever the number is. Like we're just for like 3 weeks, he makes like 58% of his threes. You know what I mean? At volume. And then all of a sudden that jumps him up to, 40% on the season or somewhere, closer to that sort of like high 30s, low 40s, sort of like number range that I think people were sort of like anticipating coming into the season. I think it was likely that he was going to see like just like the 3-point percentage dip some this year, just given his role that was changing, like he's not only is he playing more minutes, there's more usage, like he's being asked to handle the ball more. He's being asked to do more defensively. Like last season when he came in and played, it was like, all right, float around the arc and let Cooper just, slingshot you into open threes. And he gets plenty of that this season playing next to Cam. Like that's a lot of that. There's similar stuff in the mix, but if you're on the ball more and taking more off dribble shots and like, those are less efficient than wide open catch and shoot threes that have been Cooper Flag has set up. It's like, those are like, one of those is like the second best shot you can possibly get on the court outside of like a dunk. The other ones are good shots because he's a great shooter, but they're not quite as like juicy from like an efficiency standpoint. So who knows? I mean, maybe if there was ever a time for him to just like perk up and like really start to like throw flames. I mean, especially with Pat out, like this would really be like a big stretch for him. But even if he doesn't like catch fire from deep, I mean, they still need his production. They need his everything his shooting and screening does in the half court is mission critical for them. And what is good for Evans is like, and this is important, is that like teams are going to guard him like he's going to make every three. You know what I mean? He carries that kind of crazy gravity that, Kon had, Jared McCain had. Just sort of like a AJ Griffin, like that kind of just like he pulls in defenders with his ability to either run off screens or his ability to set a screen and pop out. And I think his screen setting has been really good for Duke this season too. I think he's, not just the inverted pick and roll with Cam, but him setting, back screens off the ball and then popping into space. I think that's been like really important for them. So I think even some of the stuff that Isaiah does to help Duke's offense, like he obviously like his counting stats are impressive, but he's doing stuff that's sort of also not being like sort of like accounted for like in like direct or even sort of like advanced box score metrics. But he's super duper important for them. And again, if they're going to lean on like Cam more as a playmaker without Pat, like Evans is sort of like the key to like unlocking that, right? Because it's like it's more inverted pick and roll, or it's more like split game with Evans, either as a cutter or a shooter or a screener playing off of Cam. But they or it's empty side pick and roll where Evans is initiating and Cam is screening and rolling or popping. And I think that action's been like okay for Duke this season. I mean, Evans occasionally will put his head down and try to get to the rim. For the most part, he's looking to get to his jumper, which is like it's an okay shot.
Yeah.
Not the best, sort of like, and that obviously he's a great shooter, but that kind of like off dribble, tough contested 2 or 3 is not quite the same weapon as him coming off screens or him off the catch. So that would be my thought. Like he's the guy he and Caleb are the two, I think, that like from like a scoring, production, and play initiation standpoint, like obviously outside of Cam, like you need those guys to, and especially if we look at Cam and say like, hey, like they can't scale him up anymore. Like he's at capacity, and I don't think he is, and certainly we're gonna find out. But like these would be the two guys, I just think for Evans, that can look different than it can for anyone else on the roster, except for like maybe someone like Darren Harris, who sort of has like a similar, game offensively, is used similarly by Duke, because Evans is best playing without the ball.
Yeah.
And so how can you tap into his off-ball gravity, his shooting, his screening as like a lever to pull to get more offensive impact? Not with, just down the stretch this season, whether Pat's in the lineup or not, like they need to continue to find more ways to get him cooking, because he's the ceiling raiser for them on that side of the floor.
Yeah. No,
Do you think if Pat is out, do you think Duke might experiment with more kind of ball screen actions for the 2 lead guards there with Caleb Foster and Cayden Boozer as well? We've seen it at times, right? For example, that first Louisville game, just setting ball screens for Caleb over and over and letting him get down to the rim. There's been other games. I think what was Caleb's other really good game? Was that Michigan State? Maybe he was able to finish at the rim a lot. Cayden's had moments as well where he's been in the ball screen and kind of used Pat as the roller or Cam as the roller. And it seems like Duke has really gone away from that stuff in recent weeks in favor of the kind of big at the top of the key. But with one of the bigs out, do you think they might kind of divert more back towards that?
Yeah, it's like it's been, sort of like 5 out face up, or they've really used like the low box post up game with Pat. Like they've sort of like inverted it that way too, and played out of that. And I wrote a long piece about last week on my Substack page. That was the one you mentioned earlier about some of the new stuff they're doing to sort of like get into some of these post up looks. But they're probably going to have to, right? Because just like without Pat, like Pat is other than Cam and obviously Malik gives you the sort of like 5 out face up game, but like Pat is the other bridge for this to like get to those actions. Without him, you're gonna have to get more creative or perhaps like get more conventional. And if they do that, then that's going to be Foster pick and roll. It's just tough because it's like, well, if you're going to certain teams, what's the pick and roll coverage going to be? And what does that matter? Like Clemson mixes it up. They do a bunch of different stuff, but they're also going to sit in the gaps. They're not a team that's just going to give a lot of like straight line drives to the rim. Syracuse, with William Kyle, they're hard hedging and putting 2 on the ball. Maybe if that's the case, you can then get outlet to Cam or Malik on the short roll or the pop. Maybe Caleb can look to split and get downhill. Like he can do that occasionally. But yeah, or the thought would be like, can you just get some more empty corner pick and roll with him too? Like maybe that's I feel like when Caleb's running ball screens, often it's sort of like spread middle of the floor. And sort of like maybe you need to get him out more on the edge and sort of like have the Roach
space. Kind of the Roach thing.
I mean, that was like the first 2 seasons with John. That was their like bread and butter, late game play was, flip and Roach, empty side 2-man. And maybe they're going to have to lean into even more of that with Caleb. And Caleb he's not, I'd have to double check the sort of like the numbers on this, but like, Roach was such a talented, sort of like offbeat, off dribble, mid-range scorer. And I don't think Foster's quite to that level from like a tough shot making scoring component, but he can do some of it too. Maybe Cayden Boozer is a bridge to that. Like he often, when you see them look for when he comes in the game, Duke goes like to like either like straight spread, like they'll run either straight spread pick and roll, or one of the other things you'll see them do is they've got a couple, like they'll run their like Spain pick and roll. You'll see Cayden tap his head, That means they're going to get that stack look where the 5's going to set the initial ball screen and then Evans is going to come from behind and set the back pick, or they run their what I call the 3 across pick and roll where they've got Cayden and they do this with Caleb too, but it's Cayden and Cam up top. Cayden sets the ball screen for Cayden. And then they've got 3 players across the baseline. You've got Evans and Sarr in the corners, then Ngongba or Malik in the dunker spot or in the paint.
Right.
One of the things they've been doing more the last probably like 2-3 weeks, I tweeted about this the other day, but they went to it even more against UNC. They're running what I've been referring to as angle small. The Hornets have actually done it a lot this season too, and I was actually wondering if
Nice.
if this was something that like there was some John and Charles Lee maybe even talk, because the Duke started doing this like 2 weeks after the Hornets did, but like they'll put Malik in the corner, and then they'll have like they'll have like Malik or Pat when he was in the lineup, they'll have those guys spaced to the left corner. And then in the right wing or the right slot area, they'll have Cam set the ball screen for Cayden or for Caleb. And then they've got 2 other shooters. They have Sarr in the corner and Isaiah on that left wing, sort of like on top of the 5. And they've gotten good looks out of that too. And so maybe they'll have to get into more of that. So maybe Cayden is like sort of like a button to push here, because he gives them like, some juice in the transition game. And maybe they're going to have to just sort of like run more and sort of like get into even more like transition or secondary offense, as opposed to just like, being able to get into their like half court flow. And so maybe Cayden is sort of like a card to play here too.
Mm-hmm. I like that play too, because I think Cayden's a pretty sneaky finisher, like in terms of tough shots, or like he's got a little crap. I don't know.
He's better in the mid range, I would say, than Foster is.
Yeah, Foster has
that little.
Right,
Cayden has that little push shot that's pretty money.
Jumper he hit against Georgia Tech too. I mean, he's got a few things. But what was it, Brian? I don't know how much you caught of it, but like last night against Pitt, Duke started mashing in the second half a little bit, where they would have like Cayden Boozer on the right side and he would catch, and like Cayden would, it's not really a DHO, but like he's like coming off curling, and then as he it was like almost like the pick and roll, and then Cam would pop right to like the short roll, but it was like he was already coming around, but like we were just mashing that a little bit, and like you could either have Cam right there. I think he got a clutch and one kind of late against Pittsburgh on that. I think Cayden he finished one, or the other one I think he like flicked it out to Dame or Herminia or somebody on the wing. That's maybe like, we haven't done a whole lot of like DHO stuff, like really but maybe there is something there. I mean, even the short roll to me is something that like we've done it, but like it doesn't feel like we mashed it like we mashed it last year. And maybe that's because of like how loud it was when you had Kon hitting Coop and Kaman just flying baseline, and that's just really freaking loud every time.
That's the other thing I was going to say is Duke doesn't have the lob threat this year, so maybe that's you don't have that outlet.
They don't catch well when they cut. That's another thing that kind of is bad too, right? So I don't know, but there's some stuff there maybe to
definitely. And look, I mean, if Cam is playing in lineups where Cam is playing is sort of like the one true big guy on the floor, he's the 5, Malik's out. Or maybe you've got Malik, spaced to the corner, like on some of these actions that I was just talking about. Like the short roll and handoff game with Cam does become a weapon if he's being defended by opposing 5s, right?
Yeah.
Because like whether it's some teams like I was mentioning Syracuse that want to put 2 defenders on the ball, so they're going to either have the 5 up at the level of the screen, or they're going to hard hedge. They've got 2 players on the ball. Well, that means there's four off-ball players on offense for Duke that are, at least for a second, are being guarded by 3 players zoning up on the backside, right? And for the point guard, the easiest pass 9 out of 10 times is going to be the play, either the short roll or the 5 on the short roll or on the pop, just like cutting into space after the screen. Obviously, Cam can be really dangerous in those areas. Or if you have a team that's playing drop coverage, or they're downing ball screens and trying to like pin it on one side of the court, well then there still opens up a pocket in the middle for that player, for the screener, the would-be screener on the pop or on the short roll. And you're getting less of sort of like that like backside 4-on-3 action, but you're also getting like the most dangerous player for Duke's offense with the ball in the middle of the floor against the defense that's still having to like rotate around a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there are going to be some teams that maybe want to play like more sort of like drop coverage, like a team like UNC. Well, if their center is going to be out on Cam, they're going to have to figure out they're going to have to answer some questions, because if he's going to run a handoff, like the opposing center can't just like sag 10 feet off of Cayden Boozer, because he's just going to turn and face and shoot it. Like it's a bad defensive play to do that. But it might be a tough ask if you're getting into that sort of like 5-out handoff game, especially if you're doing the sort of like zoom action, like down screen for a player, for Evans coming out of the corner into the handoff with Cam. And then it's like, can that 5 go from being like up with the ball with Cam to then dropping into the paint as Caleb or Cayden or Isaiah is turning the corner? So I think, again, like the flip side of some of the lineups they're going to have to get to is that like Cam at the 5 is like that's really tough.
If you can unlock that somehow through this.
Really,
yeah.
It can make the inverted pick and roll actions that's been like a cash money play for them this season. They've gone to it in end of halves, the end of games. Michigan State, Florida, UNC. Like it's been a big time play for them this season. And it's Arkansas, and it's won them Kansas. It's won them some games. So, but some teams might be able to switch that with a 4. UNC can switch it with Caleb Wilson, but if it's going to be an opposing 5 out in those actions, maybe you're sort of like less. It's going to be like it's going to be a larger, slower player that's being asked to maybe switch onto Isaiah Evans, who's going to ghost screen and then pop out to the wing. You know what I mean? So like that's tough. And then the one other thing I meant to mention this earlier, not to just like change the subject and pivot off this, but it's like defensively, maybe those lineups have to go to zone too. And maybe that's just like, maybe the lack of rebounding if they're small and playing zone, like maybe that is just like maybe that's just like a deal breaker and you can't actually go to it. And Duke has not played much zone this season. I know John doesn't want to play zone. Like he talks about it plenty. But maybe that's something that maybe they just have to like junk it up a little bit. You know what I mean? From time to time. I don't know if you guys watched the Miami UNC game at all.
Yeah, I did check out some of that. Yeah,
I clipped the game. I thought one of the things Miami did really well in that game was that I thought they had at least 3 different zone looks that they threw at UNC, and every time UNC tried to get to their secondary break, Miami they were busting their ass to get back on defense after like a made shot, which you have to do against UNC. But I thought they did like an A+ level effort. So shout out to Jay Lucas for that. But then like they were setting up in the zone, and you could see Dixon or Trimble coming up, racing up the floor with Vasar trailing and Caleb Wilson, running the rim. And they were all just like going to these normal spots where they're sort of like expecting, sort of like go-tos and automatics and all these different like looks and actions to be, but they were just running into a blanket of players. And so I thought that was, I don't know. I saw that, and to me, it felt like that's something you just keep in your back pocket, maybe for future matchups with UNC, because it really did sort of like throw them for a loop. But ultimately, I think Duke also might need to like junk it up a little bit more if they're not able to sort of like play a lot of their like traditional lineups and coverages with Pat out.
Yeah, I think Josh, you and Shu talked about that on the UNC reaction pod there. Shu mentioned like he was surprised a little bit that Duke didn't try any zone, especially with the foul trouble that Duke had in the second half there. But maybe that's something to pull out later.
Yeah, and UNC has some lineups too. I mean, they play a lot of Wilson, Stevenson, and Vasar together. Yeah. And obviously Vasar's like had a great season shooting the ball. Like it's been he's done a lot of good things well for UNC this season. His stretch game has been excellent, and it's gonna make him some money next season, most likely in the NBA. But I thought like when they play Stevenson and Wilson, and maybe it's a little bit trickier to do is because Trimble sort of like gone up a level as a shooter, and obviously Wilson can hit threes. You don't want to just like say he's a nothing out there. But maybe that's the thing you do with sort of like two non-shootery type guys, but then all of a sudden maybe you're just the offensive rebounding becomes too easy, and they've got guys like Vazar and Wilson that can really like disrupt on the glass.
You. Yeah. Punish you on that. Yeah. That's what you don't want is, Duke lost, but they didn't give up any dunks. And so it's like you start letting that happen, and it's like, things get in pretty quickly. And, the zone maybe was, but then again, I don't know. I mean, they were 5 of 16 before they hit their last 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Beat us. So it was working until it wasn't, it was working until it wasn't. I kind of felt like, not to rehash that one, but that our offense really just kind of let us down.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately UNC still only scored 71 points. Like, I look at that as a failure of Duke's offense in the second half there. So
major fail on that. But I know we're kind of going to wrap up here a little bit, but we've kind of talked about it. I mean, you got Clemson coming in. We talked about some different strategies here. Ironically, they just lost at home to Virginia Tech, so that's kind of a wonky little loss there. Whoa. So what initially was going to set up for first place. Wow. Now, obviously, you don't want to lose at home to Clemson, but now it does set it up.
A little bit of a break, though. Yeah,
you got a little cushion there. I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse about Clemson coming in after losing that one. To me, that maybe some slippages also happening over there, because that's a pretty brutal home loss.
That's a bad
double-digit home loss to Virginia Tech. That's not great.
The Hokies hit 11 threes in that game, and the shooting variance on a game-to-game basis is. Like that's sort of like one of the like under-discussed things I think in college hoops. Like it just it gets talked about in the NBA all the time. It's like not obviously like those shots don't happen in a vacuum. It's not like you've got to do the stuff to like set it up, and that's it. The devil is in the details, I think. But yeah, I mean it's like the opponent hits 52% of its threes. It's like you're going to be
going to play.
That's why
100%.
That's why I was like. Confident that UNC would play better. UNC had that big swoon at the beginning of ACC play there. And I was like, I think they're going to play better than this because they're giving up 13, 14 threes a game. And that's just not going to sustain, right? Yeah. And you saw them win some games after that stopped happening. So
and they also like really hit on something with like making, elevating Dixon.
Sort of like instead of Evans.
Pushing Evans to sort of more of this like complementary roll off. I mean, that was a pivotal change. Their top lineup has gone up level. Their top couple of lineups have gone up levels because of that. His shooting, size, and playmaking is pivotal. But yeah, man, Abdallah didn't even have a good game for Virginia Tech. He's been obviously really strong. It's been other than the Providence game, it's been pretty tough sledding for him this year. But I've said this about Virginia Tech a few times. It's like their top 6 guys are like legit. Like that looks like a good ACC team. It's just like once you get to like sort of like the bench, the athleticism and talent component just sort of like wears down a little bit. But that's a bad loss for Clemson. And like the one thing I would say about Clemson, maybe this will inform some of Duke's approach coming into that game, is that like their guards, Hunter and Porter, like they're good players. You know what I mean? Like they're solid. Like they're like legitimate like ACC rotation pieces. But Dylan Hunter is not Chase Hunter. You know what I mean? Right, to me, they are a team that you can flatten them out a little bit. And so I'll be curious to see if and I just don't think Porter and Hunter can just beat you one-on-one against the switch. The guardrail that Clemson has for that is, as I said earlier, talking about their offense, like they're such a good high-low team that if you switch a lot against them, they know what to do. Like they're the 5's going to go into the paint. The opposite, post will lift and they'll seal and try to throw it over the top. So like they know what to do, but just like they don't really have like the perimeter shot creation this season. They really need the system. You know what I mean? Like they really need their sets in the system to hit this
be crisp and sharp and to be hitting.
They can do it. Like it's a really good team. Obviously, 10-2 in the ACC play is like no joke, but to me, there's just a little bit less like perimeter shot creation this season, and that is sort of like lowers, I think, their ceiling on the offensive side of the floor.
And I'm curious how we attack it too, because it's a little bit of like strength versus strength here, typically. So like a full strength Duke is like, we're hammering it, we're smash mouth, we're at the rim, 2-point percentage, we lead the conference. Clemson defensively, they're number one, not letting you do that in the conference.
Yeah.
Now without Pat though, maybe I don't know if you still try to lean into like this is our strength, or if you do try to like, hey, let's spread these guys out a little bit. Let's see if we can kind of create some seams here. You're going to have to shoot the ball too a little bit. KenPom's still projecting this as a 13-point win, so they feel pretty good about it. I mean, we'll see how the things shake depending on what Pat's going to do. I'm going to approach it as he's not going to play. We'll see. But without him, though, you do have some size still here. But, I mean, Godfrey's 6'7", but he's like a tanky 6'7". Like he's a dude. He's a guy down there. He's a dude.
He's a beast.
They've got 3 6'10" guys that play real minutes.
Yeah,
right. So that's another thing.
And Waylon's like kind of he's like a wing for them. I mean, he plays the three, like the de facto 3 for them in a lot of lineups. But Carter Welling has been pretty good this season, and like I know his like stretch component, he's not shot it well from deep, but like he's like a hub for them offensively. They always have these sort of like it just feels like the last like decade, Clemson's just like always tricked out with these 4s and 5s that can like score from different levels and play make and again like just punch you in the mouth with high-low action. Davidson, who transferred in from Nevada, I mean, he sort of like comes off the bench for them a lot, but he can shoot it, he can pass. Like again, he's sort of like an important like high-low passing piece for them when they're looking for Welling and Godfrey, like in the post against with a seal or a switch. So yeah, they need the blend. This is a team that like needs to be like connected. They need to again sort of like buy into the system and smash you in the post. And then defensively, again, they do different stuff. Like this is not a team where like, hey, if we run this ball screen on this side of the floor with this guy handling it and this guy as the screen defender, where exactly what they're going to do. Like what their tendencies are going to be, but like they'll play drop coverage, they'll weak ball screens, they'll hedge. With Godfrey, he's so he's like a tight end out there like hedging ball screens, like really like setting the edge for them. And then they're just going to like really gap up. And so they give up a fair number of threes because they're packing it in to an extent and they're super physical. But so they're going to take some of that stuff away, but maybe that creates some openings for Evans or Harris if he's in the rotation, or Sarr on spotting up in the corner when he's sort of like left to his own devices there, or like I don't know, man. Like I obviously like this seems like the nadir for Hymenia. He has played well for them in some big games this season. Like he was pivotal in the win against Michigan State and East Lansing. So like I'm not predicting like a game for him against Clemson. All I'm saying is like he has the chance to like still help swing some games for them. I haven't like closed the book on him this season, I guess. Even if it does feel like he's, whether you want to say like he's hit the wall, he's
sure
has he developed, like whatever it is, it's like he's still a talented player and he can still like do impact the game offensively with his connective passing, and so we'll see. But maybe it's an opportunity for him to sort of like get off the schneid too.
Yeah, kind of get going a little bit.
I mean, it was only a few weeks ago that he goes 5 of 6 against Louisville, all in the second half, 15 points.
That was awesome little stretch there. Yeah, and he was great against Michigan State too. You mentioned that, so he's had some moments.
He's capable, but obviously, like it hasn't been anywhere close. Duke is just, they have not gotten enough like creation from the wings this season.
Yep.
Yeah,
and especially if you sort of like count Evans as like a guard, or as opposed to like, really, I'm talking about like.
Dominic,
Sarr and Hymenia, and obviously, before, I thought there was a chance if Wilkins was going to play this, sort of like before, the red shirt stuff was confirmed, like,
and then Harris has kind of slid out of the rotation.
Even that feels more guard, right, in terms of like needing to be off ball.
But yeah, that to me feels like the area. Whereas like last season, You know, I mean, they were like maybe a little bit more guard heavy-ish, but like, you know, having Kon and Proctor, you know what I mean, like as your sort of like tertiary playmakers is not a bad place to be in.
Good,
if you've also got Cooper and Sion, but different story this year. And I think they've at least found like a workable level with Dame. You know what I mean? Like I think they've at least like gotten into like a stable enough place offensively that you can like just like have him be a 3-and-D guy and really like lean into his defense. And on the games where he hits 2 or 3 corner threes, it looks good, you know?
Yeah.
To me, it feels like with many other, they haven't found like the level that they can just like bank on a night-to-night basis.
Of what you can do. It should be good, man. I mean, Clemson has played us incredibly strong. I mean, they've won 2 of the last 3. I mean, John is 1-2 against these guys. They beat us both times down there. If you recall, we beat them by 1. That was the Proctor. People might not like me to say, I'll say a little bit of a bailout there. The Proctor got some free throws at Cameron to beat Clemson. We'll take it.
That was an awful last play that
I cannot
ended up working.
That call, but I will take it. It was a bailout in the bailout way, but sometimes we get those to go against us too. So I'll take it.
If you remember, Duke was down by 5 late in that game, and Jared McCain came away with 2 big steals. So that easily could have been a loss as well.
Nice. Yeah, and then obviously the Cooper, not the Cooper, but Cooper's team last year. Cooper had the heroics weight, and then brought Duke back to it, and then couldn't quite get it done at the end.
He was real under the weather in that game.
Well, he was. That was the slip. Like he had it looked like he had it until he didn't. And there was even this is going further back, but in 2022 they played twice that year. Duke, it was super close in Cameron, and then they played in February around this like a month later, and Duke blew him out. But that was the game where David Collins like clipped Wendell Moore Jr. when he was dunk in the air. I thought Wendell Moore Jr.'s like career was ending.
I remember
one of the dirtier plays. When I think of this matchup, it's one of the first plays that comes to me because it was just like it was an insane thing to do. And obviously Wendell was okay. He came back and played a lot in that game, but that was insane.
Yeah, I remember
that crazy play.
I remember that. That was nuts. So it's been a big one. Been a big matchup, and so they're still 10-2 even after losing at home. They're still coming in 10-2. So you got to show up and handle it. They're obviously going to be hungry.
This is where you would love for again, Pat's hand thing is supposedly just bruising, but still you want it to heal in the long run. So if he has to sit out Saturday, great. It's better for him to be healthy in March, right? But
sure,
like with their size, last year I just remember Kaman getting frankly abused by Lakin, and who was there was another big that they had too.
Shefflin.
Shefflin just had him in a spin cycle, dude, with some of that.
And then Duke legend Christian Reeves too. But Locken and Shefflin was good. Really good 4-5 combo.
Yeah, so maybe they're not quite at that level this year, but still, I just feel like Clemson always has this big front court, and you would love to have Pat's size there to kind of neutralize that a little bit. But I guess we probably talked long enough at this point. We're an hour now. So.
I was just looking to and just thinking right quick, but before we do get you out of here, we got to just give me 5 minutes. Let's talk a little Kon. Let's talk a little Hornets. Obviously, there was some kind of Malice in the Palace stuff going on. We don't have to get into that super specifically unless you really want to. But for us, I mean, Kon, the culture, these guys are buying in. When they're healthy, that starting 5, like the numbers speak for themselves.
Annihilating people.
Top 5. I mean, what they are doing offensively, I think it was 1 at one point.
Yeah.
And you saw that Kon is second in 3-pointers made in the entire NBA right now.
Like he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and it's not even close, which is absurd to think about. Like 40, what are we, 36 or 7 games? I don't even know where we're at. Not that many games in. Brian, what's the kind of play on words? What's the buzz like around Kon and Charlotte, and where y'all at with it, man?
It's crazy, man. This season they've won 10 of their last 11 games, which is that's crazy. And they won 9 in a row. I mean, I don't think I'd ever, I mean, they've done it in my lifetime before, but not when I could remember it.
Yeah.
And the season to me has sort of like, there have been sort of like different like vignettes in the season. It was sort of like at the start, you're just thrilled to see LaMelo back, Brandon back. What does it look like with Kon? And then, Brandon gets hurt in Brandon Miller gets hurt in the second game of the season at Philadelphia. He misses after he's been out since January. He gets hurt the second game of the season in October. LaMelo not hurt after that. He gets hurt not long after that. And there was this stretch of games in sort of like November where they were quite bad as a team, but like they were playing like good competitive basketball. And it was not entirely because of Kon, but he was the one driving it. You could see it. Like I watched just about every Hornets game on delay because I don't want to pay for Bally, and I can just tape the games or download the film later. But often I'll like check a game, and just be sort of like, okay, it's probably the third quarter. Like, what does it look like? And it just felt like every time I would pull up the ESPN app on my phone, and they'd be losing by 7 points in the third quarter to, the Magic or whatever. But then you'd look at Kon and it would be like 21 points on, 12 shots, 5 threes, and be like, whoa, all right. Like, it was just obvious that he was driving the offense for them, like really he and Bridges. And then you just kept wondering, like, well, will we get to see it? Like, will we get to see it with LaMelo and with Brandon and with Kon together? And it looked pretty wobbly at times. I mean, there were not just rumors, there were credible reports about them maybe shopping LaMelo, and there was some pushback, I think, from both sides on it. But dude, even if you had talked to me as recently as like 3 weeks ago, I was like completely dialed into like, I'm just glad I've gotten to see LaMelo, Brandon, and Kon play together. Like, I feel good about what that looks like, but like Charlotte should try to get a top 4 pick. Like they should be trying to get Cayden Boozer or Caleb Wilson in the building or in the Bansa, whatever, whomever. Like they should be in my head. I was like, I like a lot of the stuff that's going on here. They've got a lot of good young players. They've got a lot of future picks coming in. They've got 2 first-round picks in the 2026 draft, including one from Phoenix in their own. And I was like, well, if they could get one more top 5 pick, all of a sudden this like jumps a level. And then all of a sudden they just started winning and playing great. I mean, Kalkbrenner goes down, Ryan Kalkbrenner, the rookie center out of Creighton, he goes down. Moussa Diabate, who's in the rotation, but he gets sort of like elevated to a larger role in the starting lineup. In that group that you were just referencing, LaMelo, Kon Knueppel, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Moussa Diabate, that just became one of the best 2-way lineups in the league for like the last month. Period.
Yeah, right.
Like,
that's just turn of the year, like that OKC game. I remember they played the Thunder and
first week of January,
Thunder out, and it was kind of like, that's something cool.
Something's going on. I'll tell you this:
they
had a game in November. Brandon was still out because of the shoulder injury, and you can see like Brandon's playing with that left shoulder wrapped every game for Charlotte. He looks like a lefty reliever that just came in, had to throw 3 innings and got it. Like, looks like he's got it like iced up or whatever. But they played against Milwaukee when Milwaukee was still, Giannis played. Milwaukee was still in like, we're trying to contend in the East, and it went into overtime. And that was like one of the first games that like the LaMelo Kon like 2-man game started to like really click. And I heard from people that night that are connected to the franchise that were like, basically the upshot was like, we were waiting to see that. This was an important development, was that to see like these 2 guys like clicking like this in a big time game, on the road, whatever, and I think since then, and LaMelo got hurt after that. And so you couldn't see it for a little while, but to me, they're obviously ahead of schedule. And ultimately, like they're gonna right now. I mean, they're gonna make the play-in spot. I mean, maybe they're gonna get one of the 4 play-in spots. There's a good chance that they could get into the playoffs now. So like they're they're not going to end up with one of these like top 5 picks that I was sort of like really angling for them, again, as recently as probably like January 16th, but a lot can change quickly. And just like having LaMelo, having Brandon playing together and seeing how Kon, he is, because of his competitiveness, because of his passing, his playmaking, his screen setting, his shooting, all the stuff that he did at Duke last season that like helped unlock Cooper, where Kon could sort of like float between like featured guy and also just like the ideal sort of like, secondary, tertiary, like, sort of like setup wing creator, because he's so good at screening and getting guys open. He can pass, he can shoot. Teams are always having to worry about him when he's relocating around the arc. That was huge for Cooper last season. And this year that's really been used to help guys like Miller and LaMelo get rolling too. So Kon's been incredible. I think Cooper has usurped him in the Rookie of the Year race over the last few weeks. And
Cooper
is just out of his. He's so freaking good.
It was like 6 or 7 in a row now, like above 30. He's like leading the league in scoring for 7 games. It's like
he's in the Charlotte Dallas game. With the Hornets on the road against the Mavs.
Arguably game of the year so far, really.
Maybe the game of the year, and the shot making from Cooper and Kon and that was just it was absurd. And Cooper at his size, the way he can get to the rim, get the spots on the floor is insane. But like the thing that really jumps out for me with Kon is like I was like, yeah, I wanted him as the pick for Charlotte at 4. And I thought people who just sort of like limited him as like a shooter or whatever, they were putting this sort of like false ceiling on him. And if you watched him at Duke last season, whether it was in the minutes without Cooper or playing next to Cooper, you could just see that there was clearly more there. Like he wasn't like Corey Kispert, you know what I mean? Coming out of Gonzaga, that like this guy had toughness. He had a creation and shot making components to his game. And I mean, the Hornets are literally doing some of the stuff that Duke did last season. I mean, they've literally borrowed some of the same sets that John used for Kon last season and have just like copy and pasted them into their offense. And Kon is doing a lot of the same stuff. If you haven't watched them play this season, I really recommend it. I think his competitiveness has been has like really sort of like propped everyone up, and I think having 2 super competitive guys like he and Brandon Miller on the wing next to LaMelo is a big help. They're fun to watch, and with those 3 guys, Miller, LaMelo Ball, and Kon, they can be really tough on a night-to-night basis because like those guys can just jump out and hit 15 threes against you, and then like what do you do? You know what I mean? Like you just take just whatever your plan was, you just throw it over the top rope because those guys just come out guns blazing, and like it's
and can do it. Like, I mean, they put like a $150 on Utah, and it was like, bro, like fast. They can do it quickly, and efficiently. Yeah. It's the most excitement I can remember having around Charlotte. Probably not. I mean, this was good whip. I mean, it's been since Baron Davis, but it hasn't been that many times since Baron Davis, right? There were some big Al years, some Kimba years that were fun. If you're a Gerald Wallace Bobcat fan, maybe you enjoyed a little bit of that in the day. But it's been a while. Been a while since we've had a little bit of that going on. So this
is different. No, this is different. And the fact that it's like
feel sustainable in a way. That
youthful, it's homegrown. A lot of these are like guys that they picked, or even the guy like Diabate that they found on the scrap. I mean, they signed him to a 2-way lot. Any team in the league could have had him a season ago. Long story short, I've covered this team for over a decade now, and I was just waiting for them to sort of like start behaving like a responsible, functional, small to mid-market franchise. And once the team was sold, they were able they were able to operate differently. And there's still players obviously on the roster that are LaMelo, Bridges. Those are guys that are carried over from the previous admin, but it is night and day. They've made deals at the last 3 trade deadlines. They've taken on salary to get future draft picks. They've got a surplus of picks. Like they are very good now in the front office, led by Jeff Peterson, a former FSU player, of pushing assets further. You know what I mean? And you get Colin Sexton in a deal with Utah. Well, what can you spin him into? Right? You take
Kobe
him,
White, right?
2 second-round picks. You get Kobe White, and then Orlando's looking to get under the tax. You take a deal with Tyus Jones. You absorb him. You waive him, and then you get 2 second-round picks back from them that replenish the 2 that you just lost that you'd sent out the door with Kobe White, and those kinds of sort of like on the move, on the margins moves, they weren't doing that. And you absolutely, like, it's imperative if you're a team like Charlotte to build through the draft, and you look at their team they have, but you have to like augment that with sneaky, heady moves on the margins and stuff like that. It's crucial. When you look up one day and are like, well, how does this team have this many first-round picks or second-round picks, or how do they get Diabate, and how they have him on such a great contract? It's like that stuff happens with like teams that are patient and smart during a multi-year rebuild. And we'll see, like this is about to get harder. You know what I mean? Like, I think starting next season, they're going to have the weight of expectations. Guys are going to get more expensive. I mean, Brandon Miller's in line for an extension to his rookie contract this summer. So like it changes quickly. So for now, I just want to like enjoy it, because they're just like, they're one of the best stories in the league. They're one of the best, most fun teams in the league. It is a reminder of how much fun it can be to follow or cover, or be a fan of an NBA team when the absence of expectations really does sort of just like change how you look at things on a night-to-night basis. And it certainly doesn't hurt, though, that they're playing such excellent ball. I've not seen they beat Atlanta tonight. I'm looking forward to like as soon as we wrap up, I'm gonna download that film and start cutting it up.
I was a little worried about how they would do with Musa out, because he's been so critical to them. So it's nice to at least beat the teams you should beat, right? Because Atlanta's not. Atlanta at this point is just,
But it's crazy because like they're in theory they're in the mix for a playing spot. But they're clearly punting on. I mean, they seem to be waving the white flag to an extent.
Yeah, you trade Trae Young, and then you get rid of Porzingis as well. So, I don't know. We'll have to have you back on once Kobe White's available to play. I think did he have like a hamstring thing or something like that?
Which is like, that's ultimately also why like initially they sent Colin Sexton plus 3 second-round picks out the door, but because
they got one back.
They got one back. Which is like such a man. It's one of those things where like if you're a fan of the Bulls, man, like I feel for you. As someone who's followed the Hornets, like it's such a Hornets thing to do. You know what I mean? To just like shoot yourself in foot like that. So to see another
hang on to him for years too long, and then trade him for too little, and then get it rescinded.
I don't know. I know what they're doing. Chicago is finally going to try to rebuild, but like they're doing it in a very like clumsy fashion. A lot of it is going to be contingent on them getting lucky in the lottery this season, which maybe that happens. Maybe they get the second pick and they draft Cayden Boozer and pair him with Buzelis, and you're off to the races.
Don't do that. But like, pair him with Shire if you do that. Come on now. Get that juju out of here, Brian. Get that juju out of here, Brian.
Before we go down that one, I think John's got more work to be done in Durham. But I think he's got like the talent and the disposition to coach in the NBA. I could see it, but
if he's going to join an NBA team, I beg him, don't make it that situation. I know you're from that area, but
why you don't want that?
Wait for the Celtics or something.
Also, who knows? I don't know, but it's like I kind of get the feeling he wants to put up a banner or two before he considers, before he's like really looking for greener pastures, or not even greener pastures. Like this is the most one of the most plumb coaching jobs in all of sports, despite all of the pressure and craziness that comes with it. I mean, coaching at Duke it's a fortunate position to be in.
Somebody just put the call into Grant, get him on the USA staff over there, scratch that itch, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah,
exactly. That works
exactly.
for me. But Brian, we appreciate you, man. I know you've been here quite a while. Just real quick on the way out, anything that's in the works for you, anything that's going on, plug what you got, let people know where they can find it.
Yeah, please check out my Substack page, Split the Action, briangeisinger.substack.com. All kinds of ACC coverage. It's sort of like it's like a bit of a triangle hoops slant to it, but covering the entire ACC. I published 2 big pieces on Duke last week, including a preview of UNC Duke that I actually felt pretty good about. Like some of the stuff that I sort of like pointed out to keep an eye on. I think some of that stuff proved pivotal in that game in both directions. But I'm hoping to write, if I have time, I'm hoping to write another piece on Duke in their elbow series by the end of the week. If I don't get that this week, that might be next week. I wrote a lot last week, so I'm kind of feeling like writing, just sort of like watching film here. But keep up with that there. Freelance for 247 Sports, The Devil's Den, Pack Pride, freelance at Basket Under Review, where I cover the ACC there. And if you're sort of like looking for a way to get into the Hornets more and get more con coverage, I'm a co-host of the BuzzBeat podcast. You can find that on every podcast app. We podcast at least one pod a week, one free pod a week. We have a paid subscription Substack page as well, but we're always talking about the Hornets. If you live in North Carolina, you live in the Southeast, you're trying to, keep up with Kon or get into the Hornets, this like cool story. I'm telling you, there's no better coverage of the Hornets than that pod. So please give it a check out. And if you like it, stick around, subscribe. But we're going to be covering this team and, throughout the summer, leading as long as this season goes into the draft, free agency, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And I've listened to you and James as well on Learning Basketball, I believe it's called, on Swish Theory. Yeah.
Yep.
And that was really entertaining too. I recommend people check that out. There's video elements to it too, so that kind of helps when you guys are breaking down plays.
Ryan, who hosts that, does a really good job, sort of with the production angle of that, which I know it's something you can certainly produce given your skills too. But I also write for Swish Theory. I'm hoping to have a piece out on Juke Harris from Wake Forest at some point for them in the next week or two. I think Juke's had a really nice season for Wake, so hoping to have
Duke and Cameron there.
He was awesome in that game. He was really the only thing good that Wake had. Steve Forbes basically said as much after the game, but that's another place. Another place where I contribute. Swish Theory. We've talked about this, but I think that's the best sort of like free website out there covering the draft. There's a lot of talented people that are writing and potting over there that are really putting out a pretty impressive roster and product list.
Yeah, and it's crazy. We're not that far away from really ramping up draft talk. I mean, it's already ramped up in certain places. But we're getting closer to really getting there, y'all. It'll be here before we know it. We're already halfway through February in a short month. So, Brian, appreciate it, man. I'm sure at some point between all the chaos, we'll try to get you back on in here. Maybe a little closer towards kind of postseason stuff as we get into the tournament and all that good stuff. But in the meantime, you all, we appreciate it. Rate, review, subscribe. You can email us at TheDevilsDenPod@gmail.com. You can find us on X/Twitter at DevilsDenPod247. Keep the faces strong and the verb high. Go Duke.